Today we want to talk about regulatory technology, or RegTech in short, or some of the OCC members call it RegTech, is the use of technology to enhance risk management and regulatory compliance in financial institutions. With the surge in regulatory requirements, as well as the emergence of innovative payment solutions, the RegTech industry is experiencing a rapid expansion, like mushrooms flourishing after a rain. Something which I observe is the use of buzzwords such as powered by generative AI. This phrase has become a hallmark of self-proclaimed cutting-edge technology in the RegTech landscape, symbolizing the integration of advanced AI-driven systems to meet the burgeoning demand for compliance solutions. So, how much do we really know about Gen AI? I will start with Nigel, who has just recently started FinCrimeTV News with Mei Ling. How effective do you think Gen AI can be, for example, adverse media screening, especially in minimizing false alerts, Nigel?
Let's just start from the position that I do not believe there is any such thing as artificial intelligence. So if I use the term artificial intelligence or AI, it's because it is a buzzword, not because it is a thing. Everything is generated by the program, and the program is generated by people, and therefore the question behind the question you're asking is how competent are the people who designed that system in the first place. Generative AI, as a buzzword, is used to talk about creating something new and whether the computer can create something new. And this is the next step beyond AI as we used to understand it, which is basically algorithmic analysis, through machine learning, which is basically where the computers gather data, keep that data, and apply the rules the computer has been taught to that new data. And then next is it able to create something absolutely new? The answer is no, it can't. It still has to be rules-based in some way or another. It still has to be based upon data, wherever it gets that data from, but it could get that data from sensors. It could get that data from picking up things from a camera or from scanning documents. And when you're talking about the use of regulatory AI, the use of generative AI in relation to regulatory software, what it's actually talking about is scanning the internet and other repositories of information, finding that information and putting that information into a report in some specified form. So let's be clear about this. It is doing nothing new. It only goes to where it's told to go or where it has found it might find it something useful. So in that case, it's not doing anything that the humans who sit behind, for example, WorldCheck and other products are doing. It's going off, it's finding information, and it's putting it into a form that you can understand. It's condensing it, it's making it perhaps more relevant, but is it getting it right? Well, we know from what we see of ChatGPT that it is often wrong. Now, the thing is that we're messing with people's lives here. If somebody is marked as being a bad person by something that is found on the internet, then that person's life can be put in, I mean, the life is not in harm, but their livelihoods, the way they live, even their reputations can be destroyed very, very quickly. So as a matter of public policy, I think we should not be using this. And I think regulators should be saying, absolutely do not use this technology. But regulators are enthralled with shiny stuff. They have people knocking on their door all day, every day, saying, we've got this great new product, and it's got large consultancy companies who make millions every year, hundreds of millions every year, from implementing this technology. Whether or not it works doesn't matter. They get their fees from implementing it. So there are a vast number of people who have a very substantial financial interest in getting this technology into financial institutions. And they're going along to people who don't know the first thing about the technology and saying, we can solve your problem, give us your money. But we've had, since the 1990s, a slogan saying that there are no solutions, there is only better managed risk. Now that slogan has even more prescience, more weight, because we're seeing people all over the world being sold technology which cannot possibly do a good enough job in every case. And you only need one failure for that to cause somebody enormous harm. So is it a good thing? Not really. Is it a new thing? Not at all. All it's doing is using technology to do what we've been doing for 25 years. Yes, it can scan information, it can scan more information, can scan more information faster. Can it? But it still needs to know how to assign risk values to the information that it finds. And it needs to know, without any question whatsoever, that the person it is identifying and reporting on is the person for whom the question was set. Now, we know from after 2001, after the 11th September 2001, that banks have applied all kinds of measures to try to identify suspicious Muslims. And the number of false positives was obscene. How many false positives are we going to get from this technology which doesn't know for sure and cannot know for sure that the person it is reporting on is the correct person? So no, don't buy it.
Yep, I think that comes to my point, especially on the part that, machines still need humans. They still need to be taught to be effective using past experience, and this can only be done by humans intelligently. So that comes my other point. Des, you wrote just about over 2 years ago, and I think it's still basically very applicable today, about should regulators combine the oversight of regulated entities and technological third-party providers. What do you think, given that you wrote that 2 years ago?
In my opinion, nothing's changed in the 2 years. I think I mentioned that both financial institutions and the regulator needs to have a better understanding of what sits under the bonnet of this machine learning, artificial intelligence hood. Currently, I think I used an analogy that the transaction monitoring methodology was akin to a dog guard in an empty house. Now, as we stand today, I think we're currently somewhere between Schrodinger's cat theory and chaos theory when it comes to this, purely because there's no unified approach to consistency and standardizations. I can go back to 1986 when I think it was Melvin Krasberg or somebody like that who wrote the 6 laws of technology. And the first law of technology was technology is neither good nor bad, nor is it neutral. And we have to kind of approach it in a way, for me, that the regulator, I think, needs to understand what's going in there. And the article I wrote a couple of years ago was based on the fact that I think there ought to be approved outsourced packages that people are using that the regulator is aware of as well, because the regulator is still learning at the same time. And in my opinion, we need transparency and explainability, if that's a word, to understand and trust the results that we get, the output that we get. And I'm finding more and more that people just want to rely on the technology, but you can't replace the human side that needs to supervise and make the judgment on what's coming out of some of this stuff, and especially with that technology. I don't think that we should blindly outsource governance and risk management to technology. For me, it's a risky behavior, because a lot of the decisions that come out are made without personal judgment, and they carry the risk of potential excessive risk taking and misunderstanding of what the output is. So yes, in my opinion, I think this needs to be a joint effort, because I think I used the analogy also of Formula One, where they have approved parts that have to be used on the cars, and it improved the standards of the cars in Formula One, and the third parties that they're allowed to use and the parts that they're allowed to use. And I think that's where we need a joint approach to it. The regulators and the financial institutions need to understand what they're getting into. Finally, just to finish, if you don't mind, the interesting part for me is, I think last year, the European Central Bank came out with an article that talked about, they warned about RegTech, and they said that the analogy they used is that there's good and bad for it, so we need to look at it. And I think they talked about a hammer can be used to build a home, but it can also be used to attack and hurt somebody. Or chlorine can be used for sanitation, but also for chemical warfare. So as a warning, we need to understand that it's not the panacea, and it's not going to do the job and replace your job, for instance, or anybody in your compliance team, Julia.
The term I use for this is that these machines should not be allowed to play without adult supervision.
Yeah, I think explainability has now become quite a terminology. Well, grammatically, I don't even know that it ever existed in the past. And recently also there are concerns about biasness in AI, as well as question the ethics of AI. So, on that, Mark, from a practitioner perspective, how do you think we can balance as MRO? My concern being that the teams get over-reliant and have a false sense of security that AI can do the work for them.
I think that's a very reasonable concern. One thing I like about the OCC is I can sit and listen all day to slightly different, well-informed thoughts on these sorts of issues. I particularly love Des's analogies about what's going on. The issue for me, it's like these videos that you see going around the internet from time to time of picking on no particular army, in particular the Chinese training of live hand grenades. And you see a series of new soldiers coming up, pulling a pin and throwing a grenade, and inevitably there is one who drops it in the trench at their feet, and the sergeant throws either the grenade, or if the recruit is small enough, recruit out of the trench to save their lives. And this has all the hallmarks of a what we would call a cluster duck, for the benefit of YouTube, where everything goes wrong at exactly the right time for all the reasons that you've outlined. I've never met a regulator yet who goes, we need to have less regulation because we're doing everything so badly. Not in their DNA. And the fact that you would then ask the banks to liaise with them about what's in their customer interest, no. Just the sake of time, go and watch 2001: A Space Odyssey, particularly the moment where the astronauts are fighting for their lives with a highly intelligent computer, and the astronauts are going, how? Open the pod bay doors. And the computer programming goes, absolutely not. And what I don't think a lot of people understand is that badly done RegTech will grenade the reputation of an institution for all the reasons outlined. Where does it learn from? Who's it learning from? And by the way, if it's the ethics of Silicon Valley that are the arbiters of what's going on, just how healthy is the American political culture at the moment as a result of that? Nope. This is a solution looking for a problem, and the problems it will solve will be made fundamentally worse for the reasons outlined. Thank you, everyone. That's me for RegTech.
So maybe to sum it up, I would like to draw our attention back to the article that Des wrote. Again, 2.5 years ago. Over to you, Des.
Well, I'm more than happy to point everybody towards my article, as I did the three of you prior to this conversation. I think it's the issue is that the regulators want to instead of financial institutions being fined by the regulators because of the failings or breaches of the rules and the statutory objectives of the regulators, I think the outsourced service providers, including those that say that AI is the panacea and machine learning is doing everything, that's fine as long as it's up to date. But I think those outsourced service providers should be within the remit of regulatory oversight also. I think it's a dual responsibility. That's how I'd sum that up, Julie.
I seem to have the capability or to open up cans of worms and getting topics that will spend more than 15 minutes and we can never finish discussing. I thought that we'll close this for part 1, and I would like to also make use of part 2 to talk about RegTech and what we can do about it, from the perspective, from a practical perspective, without being over reliant, and especially when it comes to buying a solution, how to choose, as well as how to prepare our team so that we can be more effective in our roles. So over and out for now, until part 2. Thank you.